Good morning, misfits and the like. Um, yeah, uh, I suppose some of you might have been waiting for Nearly Famous Part 2, and so let's see if I can start it somewhere. Um, let's talk about why the guitar is the thing that sort of spurred me on into the pursuit of being in a group and all the things that go with that. I'll take you right the way back to, oh, wow, got to be 1972, really. Uh, Pivotal moment, probably not just for me, but for a lot of people who saw that particular Top of the Pops. And it was David Bowie playing a song called Jean Genie. Some of you might remember it. Um, it was just he seemed an outrageous character, and I remember seeing that performance. And of course, back then there was no videos, and so you only got the one chance to see it, and then you might never see it ever again. Well, for a very very long time. And so you get to see it once, and I thought, well, I've got to go and buy that. So I was about 12 or 12 and a half, and I went to the local record store, which was about 2 miles away in a small part of Stoke-on-Trent called Tunstall, and strange record shop as well, because it sold TVs, hair dryers, hoovers. It would fix your TV. You could buy records there. Quite a strange shop, really. Um, anyway, that's where you would buy your singles from. And of course, a single being a 7-inch vinyl piece of actual something, you know, real, a real thing you could buy with a cover, sometimes with a cover. And so, being a collector, a record collector, and a music lover, and also discovering that um, people that I knew in the street had guitars, although I'd not seen a guitar at that time, I just knew that um, it was something I could try, and I wanted to investigate this thing of saw all these people on stage playing this thing, and it made great sounds. And I always remember it was Mick Ronson, which was David Bowie's lead guitarist in the group at the time called the Spiders from Mars, of which there is an album called The Spiders from Mars. And yeah, Mick Ronson's sound. He had a Gibson Les Paul, gold top, and he had this lovely long sustaining sustainers, and held on note, which seemed to hold on for hours. And but I didn't at the time understand what was making that guitar sustain in such a fashion. But eventually, when a few years into playing guitar, I realised that sustain or continual sustain was due to the raw power of the amplifiers being turned up, and the distortion of the. It seems counterintuitive, really, that when they first made the electric guitar, when Leo Fender and the guy, the girl with the Gibson factory, were making these guitars, they were trying to make guitars that had a lovely clean sound. The cleaner the better. It was for the jazz people and the people in orchestras and stuff, and to make the electric guitar louder but very clean. So it had a very sort of nice sound, basically. But then the 70s come along, and people messed about. The innovators of music, your Bowies, your Roxy Musics, you know your Led Zeppelins, and all these. They wanted to make this guitar sound as dirty as dirty and as mean as possible, which is completely the opposite of what they were, I suppose, first intended to do. So yeah, that that's making that decision then for me was quite easy. That, oh, that's what makes the guitar sound like this. Um, then I just need a guitar to start with. So I was only like say 12 and a half or something, 13. So I pestered and pestered and pestered my mother, who she got a catalogue, and I knew there was a guitar in the catalogue. And if you do, for those who aren't old enough to know what a catalogue back then was, it was a big thick book like this, which was, I suppose it was your pre Argos catalogue, I suppose. And the funny thing is about catalogues is that a lady in the street somewhere, she would be the catalogue woman, and uh, she would call on your mother and knock on the door, and if your mother had bought something from the catalogue, she had to pay each week. So that was the beauty of the catalogue. It was the way of paying for something weekly rather than find all the money, because back then nobody had savings and money, and if you were working class, you certainly didn't have savings. So the catalogue woman or the catalogue man would knock on the door and say, "You owe me whatever, £1.50," and she would give him £1.50, and then week after week after week until that debt was paid. So I did mither my mother for, it seemed like years, but no, I just mithered her for months until she finally capitulated and said, "Okay, okay, you know, we'll get you this guitar, but you will have to look after it or something." And of course, I wanted to look. And anyway, I bought this. It's a copy of a Gibson SG, which is the actual SG, which is what uh, famously is used by Angus Young from AC/DC. So he's used that very simple shape with the two cutouts. It's a very simple shape, usually done in a wine or burgundy colour. Mine was a burgundy colour. Uh, quite actually, the one that I got, even though it was a copy, because obviously I couldn't afford a Gibson, it'd be outrageously expensive. So I got this guitar, and I just played it to death. I mean, it it really did for what it was built for, and the way it played and the way it felt. It was a blessing in disguise. So yeah, so the guitar was for me like a fascinating. It's almost like, how can I explain it? Like a It's like a Pandora's box, if you know what I mean. You just, or a rabbit hole. You open this thing and you get a peek inside, and you think, oh right, okay, so this thing has 6 strings. Right, what do they do? Where do these fingers go? What does this hand do? Um, you know, what do I need to progress into this very deep hole of music, and starting from the very beginning? Um, and so, yeah, why the guitar again? I suppose it just it just seemed to be the perfect thing for me. I can't explain it. I suppose it'd be like somebody wants to be a boxer, and he puts the boxing gloves on, and that just you know it becomes one and the same. It's a symbiotic relationship between the person and the tools they need to express themselves. And it was the guitar, for me, that did this. It would just open up a world of music discovery, um, and then obviously with going into bands, it would then have the association of friendships as well, which is the almost like a natural byproduct of being um, of wanting to make music or your own music, which came later. Not at the beginning. I was at the very beginning. Most people are copying what they've heard, wanting to hear other guitarists, and so you know, I was like any other young lad at that time. He became a bedroom guitarist. You're in your bedroom most of the time. I mean, sometimes I never left the bedroom. I'd just be playing something over and over and over again if I could try and learn. And back then, learning stuff, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have uh, WhatsApp and ChatGPT, you know, no YouTube. So everything we learned was by ear, or we used to go and buy songbooks from the record or near a record store. We get a songbook or a song sheet, and you'd bring it back, and it would have the chords in there. You know, yeah, the whole thing about discovering the music was a very interesting part for my early beginnings at playing an instrument. Um, yeah, it's a lovely thing, and I think anybody who's learning to play anything, be it piano, flute, or whatever you choose to do. Um, I will mention singing right now is that I'd never thought I'd got actually a frontman voice, but I could be a fairly good backing singer, and I've got a good ear for the harmonies and stuff. So I was okay with that. But as a frontman, uh, you know, or I have fronted and done some very loud songs with this voice, but I think I prefer to do stuff that's a little bit mellower, especially now I'm older. But yeah, time's ticking on. Wow, yeah. So this is we're into 12 minutes now. So um, yeah, so I'll conclude with this that the early beginnings, 1972. Um, yeah, getting in, trying to get in at my first band with a relation of mine called Trevor, who was my cousin, and he was going to play drums. But I'll get into that on the next one, and then move into the more serious bands in part three. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one. So I hope everybody's okay, and free Lucy, free Palestine. Ciao.